Welcome to XXIM YouTube channel. Stablecoins are finally here on Kaspa. In this video, Ankit had a very detailed and transparent conversation with Junny from Kaspa Ecosystem Foundation about his conversations with Tether and Circle.
When Chomsky delivered a speech in the Bitcoin conference, Wolfie and a few other people already trying to find Tether.
You will get to hear about the origins and the inner workings of Kaspa Ecosystem Foundation.
Mostly the funds are still sourced from IceRiver, which is the largest mining manufacturer for Kaspa, also CoinPal, which is a payment company.
Junny shares his insights on how KEF's grants work and how this foundation is different from any other ecosystem foundations.
You have Edit, Enhance, and Fresh Air. You can see that on our website. These people, they mostly report to the core group directly, so they don't report to me. Set KPIs for the core group. Okay, you guys want us to give a run for this guy, so you better let us know what's going to happen in the next few months.
You will learn about detailed plans for both USDT and USDC and get to know about behind the scenes discussions.
I almost forgot this is going to go public.
Yeah.
I didn't really say this to the community, but we are about to run.
Welcome to XXIM Podcast, your home of decentralization. Today, I'm here with Junny from KEF. Welcome, Junny.
Nice meeting you, yeah?
Yeah, Junny, likewise. It's the first time I'm actually meeting you and good to meet you. And thank you again for coming to the show. So, Junny, I wanted to have you here to really discuss stablecoins, your discussion you had with USDC, Circle. But before that, though, I'd love to know more about KEF itself. So I thought it would be good to start with KEF, and then we can move more towards the exciting discussion about stablecoins. So first thing I wanted to ask you is, when did actually KEF got started?
Sure. So I think KEF was started about by February or March in 2024. I think only after that it comes to full operation. It was because by then that there was a nice price movement of Kaspa, and several organizations or companies are interested in building such a foundation. I would say that mostly from mining firms such as some people know IceRiver or Beijing, but also as well as Bitmain by that moment. For some reasons, Bitmain quit later, but by the moment it was about capturing interest of several different groups and organizations in general. So I think initially that's when the Kaspa Ecosystem Foundation was there, that they want to very vaguely support the ecosystem, right? But I think there are two key differences from other chains and other foundations. The first thing is that, precisely because that Kaspa itself is not EVM compatible. Not only it is a UDXO model chain, but also, it's different from Bitcoin, as it's doesn't really have the same features, even if they are both UDXO chain. So it means that with other foundations, they can say, look, we can offer grants or just subsidies to have people migrate their projects on other EVM chains to Kaspa. You cannot really do that on Kaspa, right? So that is why if we say we want to support the ecosystem, we received a few applications, but most of them are, I would say, somewhat just ideas or thoughts rather than an executable plan, which we are able to support. So we were only able to support things like Kaspa, originally known as Kas.live, or supports code base such as something developed by Kasplex, which was a connect wallet on Hook, those kind of things. So that's the main key difference, that we were having difficulty searching for projects. And the second difference here is that unlike other chains who has a treasury at the beginning, it means that they have reserve tokens, right? Because they're POS for the foundation. Everyone knows that Kaspa is fair mined, and there's no pre-allocation. So Kaspa Foundation, unlike other foundation, is actually needs to raise funds from LPs in terms of Bitcoin or Kaspa or fiat money and other assets. So it's not like the case that somehow we have a pre-built or pre-allocated treasury or wallet we allocate funds there. So we have to raise money from people, and that's why we have to be responsible to those who contribute the money. That's one key difference there as well. So I think that's fair.
You've covered off quite a bit actually, and I want to break down some of the things you mentioned here. The first one is I wasn't aware that actually KEF got started in February, March 24. So it's a very recent thing, right? So I wasn't aware. So thank you for that. And secondly, as you say, right, there was no pre-allocation, because in case of Solana or in case of Ethereum, those foundations have pre-allocation, big chunk of pre-allocation, which obviously goes back to the research on layer 1, but also supporting layer 2s in case of Ethereum. With KEF, that's not the case, right? There is no pre-allocated tokens that were given to you. And the third one is, as you say, right, it's because you have to have limited partners, LPs, as you highlighted. You need to raise funds from individuals or high wealth individuals, right? Whatever the model you work with. So it's a business that you're running here, right, as KEF, essentially.
Exactly. And it's only funny by then, because only by then you can finish raising the funds from people and you can start operation. Yeah, that's it.
And of course, when you're running can I ask perhaps a silly question? What is the difference between a foundation and a VC? Like, if you were acting as a VC, you would be doing the same things as you right now.
Yeah, sure. Let me answer this. So again, if we step back to, let's say, Solana Foundation or other POS foundations, by a foundation means that the money you can pay for researchers and for, let's say, developers are essentially in that specific token, right? If you're a Solana Foundation or Ethereum Foundation, most likely you should pay people in Solana or Ethereum, precisely because that's the money you have in your treasury, right? Because that's a pre-allocated money.
Yeah.
So for the Kaspa Foundation, that I will argue that to a certain extent, the legal essence of the KEF is like a VCOP fund, but it focuses only on the Kaspa, in Kaspa development or Kaspa related projects, as well as the capital we raised in the end of the day is still largely and mostly in Kaspa. So in that regard, that it can still pay its bills in Kaspa, show people accept them. So that's how a foundation is different from a VC. Yeah,
I think they're different things, right? Legality wise and obviously taxation wise.
I think there's one key difference if the question is framed that way, because the key difference is that the foundation doesn't really look at the NPV or the IRR as an investment. So, for instance, when the foundation supports, let's say, in an event in Singapore or in Miami, or supports researcher stuff like the ones you have seen with Elliot and also Hans, or anything, it doesn't have a return on investment, right? So that's what a foundation does, but a VC has to have a return. Yeah,
that's true. Actually, a very good point that you are investing in people on the research, which might not lead to anything, right? In some cases. So, so who are the actual funders behind KEF today? Has it changed since the start, or is it the same funders from the start?
So mostly the funds are still sourced from IceRiver, which is the largest mining manufacturer for Kaspa. Also CoinPal, which is a payment company, and we're also sorting out to have more partners or fund contributors if possible. To be honest, that we are not that after it, because we are not trying to capitalize on the brand of Kaspa just to raise more money. To be very fair, that's the cost of supporting Kaspa for now is not requesting that large amount of money. Mostly it's what we have now is sufficient and is enough. We don't see a necessity of raising more funds or capitals, but if necessary, we can still do that. And yeah, definitely agree on the point about that the foundation doesn't really have a return on investment to a certain extent. By the way, it's not the case that we don't want a return. It's just the case that this return sometimes also reflecting a more macro and general way of just very vaguely and generally making Kaspa better, right? Not in monetary terms, right? So yeah, this is
And also, it's strategic, right, for IceRiver Ventures. If Kaspa does well, then I think obviously IceRiver is likely to do well. Of course, there's more competition now in the mining space, but I think that's more of a strategic alignment, also, right?
Exactly. So originally, like there is this bid and offer from both IceRiver and Bitmain, and we were in the opinion that IceRiver is more dedicated to Kaspa, which is kind of true, right? Because Bitmain has more a range of different products and doesn't really have to bet on Kaspa, but IceRiver is like it's the main source of revenue so far as Kaspa.
That's great. So Junny, what is your story and what's your role at KEF?
So that's kind of an interesting question because I entered this so-called crypto circuit or crypto land back in 2017, and that's when I had my first ICO and stuff like that. So I how do you say it, like I'm not really I'm doing any formal work or job for quite a long time, and so like in 2024 that's the KEF saying that they want someone to run this foundation, and occasionally that I have a few friends who run the Tom Foundation and other foundation, and they said it's quite. I didn't really know about Kaspa before the invitation, so I spent a few time reading the research papers and getting to know it. I do think that Kaspa is a very ambitious technology, and of course I understand the challenge of running such a foundation, because I won't call the names, but to be honest, for a lot of so-called, let's say, X foundation, like very big ones, what they do is that they have to go to the capital market, raise funds, and sell their tokens in their treasury in exchange for US dollars to the so-called fundraisers, to make sure more and more people are on the same boat with and so on. So I understand that running a so-called foundation like this is challenging, but also I feel that this is a possibility of growing a real top technology. And by the way, it's already like a top 20. I still think it's top 20 project. You don't have to look into the market rank. That rank is, had a lot of locked tokens and stuff like that. The FTP is not real. It's not reflecting anything. So yeah, so I was like, yeah, I should take it, and I think it's a very good platform opportunity to make something happen. So that's it. I didn't start it off, but the organizers or the funds providers, they want to find someone who run this, and they found me, and I was like, yeah, this sounds like an interesting idea. I'm happy to join. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you joined in 2024 when it got started, and now you're running, right? So your KEF is you, or there are more people behind KEF? Like, of course there are.
Of course
they're backers, obviously.
There are more people there. For instance, that's if you're talking about the grantees under the foundation for now, because namely they're also affiliated with KEF. You have Edit, Enhance, and Fresh Air. You can see that on our website. But these people, they mostly report to the core group directly, so they don't report to me. Of course, I'll chat with the core group to say, hey, are you guys what are you guys working on? Are we happy with the progress? We maintain the grant status, but they don't take instructions from me, and they don't have to report to me about their work. So this is for the affiliations. For the KEF itself, so we have, I think some of you might have heard of Monica, who delivers speech in Hong Kong as well. We also have Evie, who runs a BD connections for us. So they're also in alignment that there's a finance team, the legal team, and also hiring, HR, kind of things. So yeah, it's a team of like around 10, 15 people.
No, it's good to get some more clarity as you're explaining, and I think it's good that there is a forum that we have with XXIM. So I'm quite pleased that we are actually chatting, and I'm sure community is going to like it as well. So just one of the things you said, Elliot is actually one of the people that you're funding now, right? KEF is funding. What is the process that you go through?
Sure. So, that's a very good question. Actually, very shortly, we will release a Twitter or an article about how to pitch to KEF to talk about, if you want to apply for grants, either for events or for research. What's a better best way you can write about your application. But coming back to the question you asked and the actual example, so of course, for the this kind of stuff, we obviously would take recommendation from the core research group. If they say they want to talk with someone, and if they think someone is vital for the future growth of Kaspa, then we will be in contact with them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we will, let's say, just listen to whatever the core group said. Again, this is we're different entities. Most of the thing is that we want to know the core, even let's say, even if Mr. Y needs to explain why this person is needed for the next period of time, let's say 12 months, 24 months, and what this guy will be working on, and what kind of objective or progress it will help Kaspa achieve, right? And I think that's very important, right? Because obviously Kaspa is a great project, but we are trying to speeding it up and make sure that we have more objectives traceable, or let's say in a very aggressive way, but just take it as a joke, set KPIs for the core group. Okay, you guys want us to give a grant for this guy, so you better let us know what's going to happen in the next few months. So that's how it works. Sometimes it's a 100% sponsorship or grant. Sometimes we will have to sort out different sources to back up one person. So that's for the case of Edit. Of course, we are also opening our more opportunities and research grants to other experts, not necessarily serving L1 or serving Kaspa. For instance, Lattice Group, the newest potentially quantum resistance ZK technology, which is for the Lattice. We also sponsoring those professors and researchers to see if these methods can be adapted up, maybe layer 2s or maybe layer 1s. But these parts, and we're not taking recommendations from the core groups.
Did you say Lattice?
Yeah, Lattice. I think that's a new term for technology.
Yeah, Lattice. Okay, all right. I'm not aware of it.
It's a new technology. So we sponsored a research camp for the past few weeks, and let's say that's the future of the ZK technology. I mean, we can talk about this thing next time. But I think one thing the community might be interested in learning about is that the ZK part is that the ZK stuff is highly mathematical, which means as a science, it evolves very quickly, and it has some new stuff every few months or every few years. So that's one of those.
I mean, ZK is huge, and Ethereum has spent years building ZK technology from ZK Star to ZK. Like, there are so many different types of ZKs. But no, I get it, and I think it's a topic for another day, perhaps. I guess the bigger point you're trying to highlight here is, KEF does fund outside of layer 1.
Exactly. That's a key difference. What I'm saying here is that obviously we take recommendations from L1s very seriously, but also as myself and as KEF, we have our own visions of thinking what's as important. So there's no hierarchical or commanding or pecking order between the core and the KEF. We don't have to listen to them, and obviously they don't have to listen to us at all. So it's more like they want this, and they will ask a few different sources to say, hey, I want some guy to work on something. Any of you want to fund them? And we will check it.
How do you align? Because how do you align business objective to the layer 1, which is mostly perhaps driven by technology and the current trends within the space, right?
I think the way I've approached this question is that because I don't think there's any misalignment. So what we are trying to hope for is that we don't actually think every time have to have a perfect alignment or a perfect synergy and then move, right? Most of the times we just say, because again, especially from us, I think maybe the genius scientists from the core have a better say on this. But from our point of view, we don't really know if this is a perfectly good thing or not. We can just smell it to say this may be promising and this may be a good thing to do, right? So we kind of always shoot for perfect alignment before we get started. Most of the time, just that if the cost is fair and it sounds potentially good, then we're quite down for it. So basically, we're quite down for everything as long as the cost is not huge. Of course, we're talking about like $500,000 or $1 million. We have to be a little bit cautious. Even when it comes to to smaller let's say bills or invoices, we're mostly like we can just do it. It's not
No, thank you. So just quickly to wrap this topic, right now KEF is funding some people on the core side, funding obviously Kasplex entirely, and then obviously I've seen the recent one with the Kaspa Finance guys, right? So these are the three sort of pillars.
Yes, sure. Let me break this down. So firstly, on core, again, I think I provided enough information about the core group or layer one stuff already. So that's mostly it. We are very happy and we are flattered to have the opportunity to sponsor those initiatives. And when it comes to Kasplex and layer 2 initiatives, so originally, I think that's quite important. For us, that we will be very happy to see smart contract happening on layer 1 directly. Okay. And it's exactly in July 2024, which is exactly like 1 year from now. We had this, not we, like the entire Kaspa community had this huge meeting on Discord, and we're discussing about the potential development of smart contract on layer 1 directly. But if I remember correctly, we don't have any actionable items by then. So at that moment, we say we should support layer 2 initiatives, right? And before I jump into that, please note that we are also trying our best to support layer 1 conversations with potential partners for smart contracts on layer 1. And the live example of this is that I'm exactly the person who puts XXIM CEO, the name is Umar Ray, in the same group with Mr. Y, and also Risk Zero people to facilitate these conversations. And that's also, how many community people want to hear of it. But Mr. Y and Vitalik, I think, had a launch, I think mostly talking about the EVM topics in there. After the event, Vitalik posted on Twitter saying that, our EVM should be converted into the EVM in the future. So still, KEF is dedicated to supporting smart contracts, and that's what I did already to support those things to happen on layer 1 directly. But this is totally up to the design of the core group scientists to us. So with that said, at the same time, we feel that to make sure that Kaspa is still relevant to the mainstream cryptocurrency or crypto asset world, that we may still want a layer 2, right? And a lot of this thought is driven by Tether and Circle, who argue that they can only offer solutions or work with us on EVM chains. I personally have a few negative opinions about EVM solutions. If I can choose, I don't want to do EVM at all. But for certain reasons, we feel that given the fact that we have no expectation of when smart contract on layer 1 can actually be online, and we also don't know, even if it's online, will we be fluent or smooth in finding partners with that. So we say we should work on layer 2s. And it should also be noted that we had talks, and actually very deep ones, with both everyone like Sparkling and IGRA, as well as before Kaspa, right? Because we think these are again Anton and Roma, they are amazing scientists and people. For certain reasons, we didn't decide to invest in them. But just want to make sure that we definitely talk with many people, almost everyone who can help with a solution. We still decided to fund the Kasplex just as as we are most familiar with the team, and we feel that comparing to Sparkling is very ambitious. Okay, Sparkling is almost making a new set CPU. It's like designing new circuits.
Sorry, Junny. One thing, when you say sparkling, you mean Sparkle? That community is aware of Sparkle?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sparkle by Anton. Yeah, the project.
By Anton, right? So that's aspect that people might
aspect.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So you're talking about Sparkle. That's supposed to bring smart contracts on the layer 1 itself, right?
Not really. Sparkle position itself as a layer 1.5, right? And I won't comment too much on if it's on layer 2 or not, on layer 1 or not. I think I will leave this question to aspect and you answer if necessary. But very quickly, again, going back to the topic, is that we didn't really hear of IGRA by the moment, because we are only in contact with IGRA last October or November in DEFCON, by when we already decided to make Kasplex work on it. Anyways, so we are supporting different kinds of initiatives. We were also trying to help IGRA to find some investors and connect them with certain capital groups. Maybe not, doesn't really work out in the end, but we're in general supportive of all these kind of initiatives. And on KFC, it's not true to say that I think we support KFC as we do for layer 1 and Kasplex, because we think the layer 1 and Kasplex are quite the fundaments and the infrastructure that we really need. For KFC and KasKeeper, if you have noted, it's mostly like, they're part of our portfolio. We invested them, we expect to succeed. But it's not the case saying that, we have any let's say judgment or assessment or preference, right? So it's mostly just a case that we think these project teams are more reliable. And maybe, again, I want to be very fair to other projects here. Maybe because that I have met with those guys personally, and we think that they're more likely to succeed. But it's not the case that we're having them as part of KEF. That is not true. KEF is one of the investors in those projects, right? They're independent teams.
Right. So you're on the cap table on Kaspa Finance, but you're not the majority investor, right? I think that's what James mentioned in the interview we had.
No, we are not. We're like the leading investors, because obviously they are building one of the first DEXs and service providers like Kaspa wants support from us. Yeah, but we are not like the dominating ones. And I always tell James the same thing. I said you should always consider what is best for KFC, not trying to consult my opinion on everything. I don't know what's gonna happen. And then of course he should care about Kaspa, because Kaspa community is vital to success, right? So that's a relationship.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Let's move on to the exciting topic of stablecoin, right? So yourself and Wolfie, I believe, a month and a half ago, went to Circle to meet Circle, right? Yeah. How did it go? What was the proposal put forward by yourself and KEF to Circle? What was their take on Kaspa?
Sure. Again, I'm afraid that I have to bear with me speaking for a few more minutes, because I really want to give the Kaspa community some context for stablecoins, because I feel I'm not gonna say it's good or bad thing, but I feel the Kaspa community, they're not, most of them are not familiar with the history of stablecoins. So I know a lot of us are fans of decentralization, but we have to realize that the stablecoins of today are all centralized, which means they're run by specific companies. The only one, or the ones that are decentralized, which we call them the algorithm stablecoins, are disappearing and are banned, especially after the collapse of Luna a few years ago. So after that, there's no more, let's say, decentralized stablecoins. There are only centralized stablecoins. Tether and Circle are private companies, and they run stablecoin services. A few other things, like other crypto collateralized stablecoins such as DAI or let's say USDF, the Falcon stablecoin run by DWF, that they are backed by, let's say, BTC or wrap BTC, but they're still centralized because they have to be put in custody. And when I say in custody, it really means a certain level of centralization, because these are still centralized and company service providers. So with that said, it means that when we work with Circle and Tether, and we want to run issues on stable coins, there must be someone who holds a liability there. And it's and I think it was back to Nashville last year, when Trump delivered a speech in the Bitcoin conference, that Wolfie and a few other people already tried to find Tether. So when you approach them, that they have two versions of stable coins for Tether, Circle, and everyone else, and let's say First Digital, right? One thing is called a bridge one, and another thing is called a native one. So by bridge one, it means the liability on the new chain is not on Tether or Circle itself. By which I mean, let's say if I mint a stablecoin on Tron and then I bridge it to Kaspa, then the liability is not on Tron. It's not on Tether anymore. The Tether only recognizes their liabilities on Tron. They don't recognize their liabilities on Kaspa. Whoever runs this bridge owns the liability there. So it's a very meaning that we want to have native tokens and directly. But we had conversations with almost everyone in the space. We talked with Paxos, who runs a new stablecoin called USDG. Again, anyone if is interested in that, they can go check it. The only new integration they did so far is with Solana. The team originally ran Binance FUSD. And we also talked with First Digital. And when we approached a deal to have First Digital stablecoin, then there was this incident of Justin Sun reporting that First Digital breaching the deal and stuff like that. I mean, these are all public information, right? People can just find no need to check or verify with me or saying, hey, did I just invent something that we talk about? Of course we didn't. And back to Tether and Circle. So when we say we want native stable coins, Tether is not, to be honest, it's not very active. So I found them a few times. I also grabbed their people in Hong Kong. I also have a name card from Tether. You can see it's quite old. Yeah. They're not very actively talking with us. And again, I don't want to frustrate the Kaspa community, but it's not because Kaspa is not good, but it's because that they don't sense that there is a group or company that want to pay for the integration fees and so on, or for pay them to online. Again, if you check online, there's a chain called KAIA. The name is Kaya. Again, I don't want to publicly say it's a good or bad chain, but people can just check it, and you can see even that coin has a native USDT, right? Mostly because they need economic incentives to run. So we talked with them about native stuff. They say they don't want to do it, and we talked about bridge options. Tether was like after a few months of conversations and with NDAs, they were able to offer as a bridge standard. So even if the bridge liability is not on theirs, but obviously want to maintain a standard, so you have to build that according to the standard. And obviously, if I haven't noticed before, these can only happen on EVM compatible chains. So anything like that needs to wait until either Kasplex or IGRA is online. So what's being turned around is that we have better progress with Circle. So we were able to talk with in Hong Kong and in a few different locations, and in the end, we were like, we want native USDC in the future. Can you help us do that? Because USDC is more active, right? USDC, again, just go on USDC website. You can see they're making Aptos USDC native. They're making a lot of different USDC native. Can we do that? And the good part of USDC is that they're very happy to, again, in our meeting, to say if we can run a small scale, not experiment, but small scale trial with a bridge version, then they can make it into native. So by making it native, it means we will give the control of the bridge to USDC to Circle side. So now it's native, right? So they like future. Yeah, so that's the best outcome we have in Circle with Circle in New York. We definitely have a lot of other different exciting news. For instance, I think they are aware of the name of Kaspa and they think it's promising. We also showed them the merchant acceptance of Kaspa as shown on the kaspa.org website, and they like it as well. So now they're waiting for some L2s to be online to work with, and they even suggest us no need to mint too much for the bridge version of the USDC because they are confident that they, let's say, I almost forgot this is gonna go public. So they are interested in making it native in the short near future if everything went on well and there's no security problems, there's nothing severe going on. So that's a part with Circle. And by the way, I think the customer committee might is that we are also invited to host an event in their new headquarters once it's completed, and with the name of Kaspa. So yeah, we have a few exciting news in Circle, but with Circle in New York. But I think that's the most important takeaway.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so much you covered off there. I was writing some notes while you were speaking. These stablecoin issuers, right, Tether or Circle, they really, they really care about the volume, right? They look at volume, what's going on the native chain, right? They care about obviously how sophisticated the DeFi ecosystem is and just general overall, DApp ecosystem. So I think, I mean, from my perspective, right, it's almost like Kaspa is getting mature and Kaspa is getting there with the layer 2's EVM coming, right? That's when I think it's the right time for even stables to come.
Right. Because I think this is again is a very good question, because it points out to the nature of many of the, let's say, inconsistencies between what we think of Kaspa and other stables think of Kaspa. So, like as I mentioned, that Circle and Tether, they're companies, right, and they have their corporate interest, and obviously that not only they have to invest in money and human resource try to accommodate with Kaspa, but also this is opportunity cost, right? They could have spent the same resources doing something else as it's more important. So I think, what KEF really tries to do here is to frame and package the very general and the very big, potential benefits some people or companies making from Kaspa into tangible and touchable benefit that can appeal to people in the rather short term. So that's what we are really trying to reframing and peaking from the Kaspa community when we pitch to different organizations and so on. So that's it. And this is a very interesting one. I do want to extend a bit on that, because I know a lot of times that Kaspa community wants to care about the real world transactions. They're not at degen characteristics. But that it's a trending mode of thinking by the crypto people saying, hey, most of the volumes happen on the DAX or happen on memes or other tokens, not necessarily memes, right? Let's say other kind of utility tokens, but tokens on your DAX. So I feel that's apart from reframing what Kaspa can provide. We're also trying to offering some supplementary benefits, right? We say, these are not necessarily exclusive. And by the way, if Kaspa does aim to become the greatest technology in the world, it has to be the most inclusive and the most tolerant, right? You cannot say, hey, you're a meme, you shouldn't run on my platform. I don't think there's a saying like that. I see Kaspa as the IPv4, IPv6 protocol, right? And you cannot say, hey, I'm the network protocol, and if you're a game or if you're something I don't like, you should exclude it. That's definitely not. That's what it's like.
Just going back to, I guess, the stables, right? I mean that's great news to hear that they've invited you to come to the new office.
Not invited me, but they said Kaspa can do a Kaspa or something like that. Yeah.
Kaspa as a whole, which will be represented by Wolfie, yourself, or the community, right? But whole
local people. I don't want to correct on that. Like, if possible, in any of the events we sponsor, we always say, hey, anyone who are in this city, you're welcome to join and give your free tickets. It's just a new policy or not policy. It's a new action saying that we don't want to fly over people who are not, but we're local in the city. Well, you're welcome. You come and we can offer your ticket.
So USDC, when I was doing some research, I found they are actually listed as the native tokens on 24 different chains, right? I don't think they'll have a problem coming to 25th. As long as the business case makes sense for them. In terms of when they do come on, let's assume in 2 months' time, Kasplex will go live on 31st of August as per the plan schedule. IGRA will go, live as well, mainnet later this year. How would USDC choose which layer 2s to opt into? It wouldn't be bridged, right, natively between Kasplex to IGRA. Or will they come on both at the same time?
I'm not entirely sure on that. So we have to be aware of the fact that before it's turning native, that in its bridge status, Circle doesn't really intervene with the process, right? So Circle may provide some technical support to make sure the implementation is successful on both the chains. But then I think it's up to the chain's own work to make sure the volume looks good and the users look good, the transaction counts look good, and then it's up to Circle's assessment of when and how to make these things native. If you want to make both native, you want to make one of the native, you want to make neither native. So I feel this is an issue left for Circle, and I think I think that the good thing for Kaspa is that Circle, or let's say any stablecoin service providers, are aware of the fact that they're working with layer 2s, and they, in their PR and propaganda, we will still be saying that this is something about Kaspa, not about the layer 2. I think this is especially true for Kasplex. Again, this is not saying that IGRA is not going to make good things happen, but specifically because Kasplex doesn't have its own token, right? So it has to say, this partnership or this achievement or this saying is about Kaspa, right? It doesn't make sense to say this is about Kasplex, right? What's the point of saying it? Because it's at no tokens, and no value by.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it. How will that integration work? Because one of the things Wolfie mentioned was that that when you do bring these stables, you need to pay some money, which I didn't think it was right. But are you aware of how much it actually costs to bring on chain?
I think the money issue is mostly with Tether and First Digital and the other providers. For Circle, the bridge version is that it doesn't charge any cost from the Circle side. Okay, that
just integration
just
cost,
right?
There'll be some integration.
No cost at all. It depends. Like, because for instance, if you want to bridge USDC or USDT on Kaspa layer 2, you have to have a bridge between the layer 2, let's say Tron or Ethereum, right? And it depends on who makes a bridge.
I see. That's the bridge version. I was talking about native. Bridge, obviously, you don't have. Yeah.
Again, the native one means that, again, so when you have this bridge, again, the liability for the bridge version is that the liability goes to whoever runs and owns the bridge, right?
Right.
And for USDC, by making native, it means that, let's say, if KEF runs this bridge originally, right? And KEF is the one who made the tokens on Tron and have the USDC on Kaspa. And every money is going within this bridge. When it goes native, KEF keeps the bridge code and gives the bridge access and everything to Circle. So now this is still a bridge version, but it's a bridge version owned by Circle. And Circle can have its own work of making its native, blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that, but they have their own way of doing things, and they don't charge extra cost.
I see. No, that's great. But when you say liability, if it's KEF liability, in case things were to happen, right? Unfortunate event were to happen, then KEF is liable, right? Which is a liability to the business, right? To the foundation, right?
So I want to make it very clear, because I think this is somewhat sensitive topic. Again, this all goes back to the background that the bridge and the stablecoins, all of them, or the majority of them, are centralized anyways. So the question number one is that who is going to mint for the USDT on TRC20 and bridge it to Kaspa, right? Because let's say even if this bridge version is there, who is going to do that? Like, there's someone who just mysteriously want to bridge over here? They won't, right? So it's if KEF is running the bridge between the stable coins, then I can tell you, like, we don't think that there is another party that can run this at this moment. So let's say KEF runs this, then the assets are unlocked even by smart contract or by multi-signature or by MCP, different security methods, whatever it is. But just like what you will see with other bridges, that this assets goes through this bridge and it's owned by KEF or by a centralized entity. So at this moment, at this stage, the liability is owned by the entity, whoever runs. But when it's given to Circle, then Circle owns it, and then we're free of our responsibilities. So with the same standard, I didn't really say this to the community, but we are about to run bridge version of Tether as well. So you may have USDT and USDC at the same time, but we have to be clear, and I don't want to overpromise to the community that we are not sure if Tether will become native. At least we haven't heard of any comments about that from Tether side. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And where are you going to bridge it from? Is it Tron? You mentioned Tron a couple of
Oh,
times now.
to be honest, we can bridge it from any kind of
Yeah.
any EVM chain,
Bring
right?
Arbitrum or anything. Yeah, you can bring it from anyone.
Yeah. What KEF will do is that we will mint from somewhere to make sure there's some initial liquidity. If again, we want to make sure that there is some volume of stuff. But let's say if there's a token, again, I understand that some of the Kaspa fans may don't like the story, but just to make you understand in the easiest way, let's say if there's a new meme token or there's a new token on layer 2 that is pumping and many people wants to trade this, then other people, maybe they didn't know Kaspa before, they will have to bridge their stablecoins from whatever chain they're from and to this layer 2 and to trade this Kaspa layer 2 token. So yeah, so that's the thing.
I see. All right. That's amazing. I perhaps wanted to wrap this up with this question, last question, perhaps. Any discussions you've had with Binance or Coinbase? Because that's one of the other, obviously, very exciting topic within the community.
That's a good wrap-up question. And I want to start off this question still related to the stablecoin discussion, all right? Because one of the biggest challenges of stablecoin is to make sure it is distributed and it is used, right? It's very easy to launch, to be honest. It's not hard to launch it. The problem is that why people will accept you. And obviously, in the crypto world, the most important exchange and mediums are the exchanges themselves, right? Binance. Exactly. So we have settled with a few like small to big different exchanges to say they will accept Kaspa or Kaspa layer 2 stable coins. I think that's very important. Only by that, you can have more people use the stable coins. KEF is happy to offer, let's say, discounts or extra fees for the exchanges for acceptance of Kaspa L2 stable coins. So that's one thing about this. But I also want to highlight that I'm not sure if the general community of Kaspa knows this, is that Binance or BNB chain now has a zero fee of using BEP20 stablecoins on BNB. So you can see that the exchanges are trying very hard to use their advantage and flex their muscles of mass user groups to win this competition. So that's with that said, well, it means when we talk with exchanges, we have to cover a lot of different topics, right? Stablecoins, and also people know the Binance mining pool. So talking with exchanges is a difficult, a pack of different work. It's not just about listing a lot of Kaspa. So that context of this, and specifically on listing on Coinbase or Binance or let's also add up a bit here and other exchanges. I think Wolfie might have already talked a bit about this. I think the biggest challenge is that not just that Kaspa community has a zero listing fee policy, which that is why I feel no one even wants to start a fundraising for such listing fees, right? Because I think it's regarded as politically incorrect for the Kaspa community. But also because that's nowadays Kaspa has a fairly big market cap, and many people don't know it's a fair launch and a fair mined project. So with this market cap, they think they are able to pay a lot of fees, right? So the price quotes we get from this exchanges are quite crazy.
I see.
That's it. And I also don't want to be too, I don't know how to frame this, but again, just to be factual, that on one hand, Kaspa doesn't desperately need these listings because we also have okay list and okay liquidity and trading volume. On the other hand, these people feel that the exchange side feel that Kaspa is an old project, so it doesn't really bring new KYC users. It means that if you're a Kaspa owner, most likely you already have a Binance account or a Coinbase account. That's why I would assume that Kraken, again, it's my assumption, it's not an official statement from Kraken, but that's why I assume Kraken would be happy to do that, because if you're a Kaspa owner, maybe you don't have a Kraken account yet, but you already have a Coinbase or a Binance account. So it's going to be difficult and challenging. And from our side, we are always trying to achieve the best for Kaspa and the community in general, but we also need to think that it is a little bit out of scope for us to say, look, let's just afford whatever the listing fee will be for Kaspa. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think it was very transparent. But Junny, thank you so much for your time. I think we covered so many different topics in very short time. So, I'd love to have you back, but appreciate your time for this session.
Thank you very much. It was great chatting with you.